Good evening in Mexico and good morning in Vietnam. Thank you for joining us in this important day as we gather to celebrate the 5th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between the Socialist Republic of Vietnam and the United Mexican States through this seminar called 50 Years of Friendship, Future Paths for Mexico-Vietnam Relationship, organized by the National Autonomous University of Mexico, the Institute for European and Americas Studies of the Vietnam Academy of Social Sciences, and the Mexican Embassy in Vietnam. To officially open this important academic gathering, we will first hear from the directors of the organizing institutions, followed by His Excellency Mr. Alejandro Negrín, the Mexican ambassador to Vietnam, who will share deep insights into the past 5 decades of the bilateral relations. Ambassador Negrín, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias. Thank you very much. Sinkamon. Dr. Alicia Girón, Director of the University Program of Studies on Asia, Africa, and Oceania of UNAM. Dr. Adalberto Noyola, Director of UNAM Office for Asia. Dr. Zhang Minh Zuk, Deputy Director General of the Institute for European and American Studies from the Vietnam Academy of Social Sciences. Distinguished speakers, Dr. Pablo Ramírez, Dr. Dinh Thi Thuy Linh, Dr. Leti Van Nga, Dr. Felipe López Veneroni. Dear friends, Xin chào Boi Sang to Hanoi và chào Boi Sang tại México. Buenos días en Hanoi y buenas noches en México. It is an enormous honor for me to participate in this virtual dialogue organized by UNAM through its Office for Asia and its program of studies on Asia, Africa, and Oceania, as well as by the Vietnamese Academy of Social Sciences. If you allow me, we are going to make a PowerPoint presentation. So I would say that in itself, this seminar is a great reason for celebration. On the one hand, it is the 3rd seminar organized in the last 2 years between the Vietnam Academy of Social Sciences and UNAM. This shows how the academic sector is becoming one of the pillars in our bilateral relationship. On the other hand, the theme of our seminar could not be more timely. In this 2005, we commemorate the 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations between Mexico and Vietnam. This celebration is a great opportunity to reflect on the remarkable progress of our bilateral relations and on the enormous potential and challenges we still face. And of course, this reflection has to be carried out taking into account the broader context of Mexico's relations with Southeast Asia and Vietnam relations with Latin America. As the program of our seminar shows, we have a lot of material, a lot of topics to examine. There is no doubt that Mexico and Vietnam are two of the most interesting nations in the world. These are nations that, due to their specific weight and characteristics, will play a very important role in the international reconfiguration we are living. Therefore, I personally believe that the vision of the future of the governments of both countries should have a central place in our reflection. Mexico, under President Claudia Sheinbaum, has launched the Coal Plan Mexico, which seeks to position the country among the 10 most important economies in the world. And this ambitious initiative aims to expand Mexico's international presence, strengthen national content in industrial production, and build 100 new large industrial parks focused on strategic sectors, among other objectives. Meanwhile, Vietnam aspires to become an upper middle income country by 2030. The government is pursuing what some are already calling the second Doi Moi. I mean, the second major renewal of its economy in the last 50 years, in which digital transformation, technological change, and the role of the private sector will play an essential role. As I said, in the context of the international reconfiguration we are experiencing, I believe it is crucial for Mexico to deepen ties with Vietnam and with the Association of Southeast Asian nations beyond our traditional relations in Asia Pacific. It is important to always remember that Mexico is a nation clearly oriented towards the Pacific. As we can see, la siguiente, Álvaro. As we can see, we have 11,000 kilometers of coastline, and 8,000 kilometers of which face the Pacific Ocean. Meanwhile, it is vital for Vietnam to strengthen its relations with Mexico and Latin America as part of its policy of strategic balances around the world. In my case, working in the field of bilateral relations, in recent years, I have worked for strengthening the two major engines of cooperation between our countries. First, the engine of political dialogue and collaboration in international forums. Second, the engine of trade relations that have grown exponentially thanks to the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, also called CPTPP. So today, Mexico is already the main buyer of Vietnamese products in Latin America, with bilateral trade of more than $15 billion last year, far surpassing any other country in the region. However, this trade relation is characterized by a huge deficit for Mexico, and it is very important to reflect on how to build a more balanced and mutually beneficial trade relationship. Additionally, reciprocal investment flows are still emerging and present great opportunities. Over the last 3 years, we have incorporated new elements of dynamism into the map of bilateral relations. I am referring especially to the areas of academic, scientific, technical, and cultural cooperation, which should become in the medium term the third engine driving force in the Mexico-Vietnam relationship. This will require consistent and long-term efforts and the support of institutions such as UNAM, the most important university in Mexico and one of the most important in the world, and the Vietnam Academy of Social Sciences of Vietnam will be really critical. For these reasons, when we examine the relations between Mexico and Vietnam, we are referring to a relationship in a status of strengthening and with enormous potential. And I would like to explain this point. On the one hand, we have the next one, Alvaro, please. Next one. On the one hand, we have a well-established bilateral institutional architecture, which elements such as a mechanism for political consultations, a joint economic trade and investment cooperation committee, and a multilateral trade agreement, the CPTPP, which regulates economic relations between our countries. Next one. Additionally, we share elements of identity and complementarity, including a strong commitment and priority to reducing inequality and poverty, as well as the successes that both countries have achieved in this area, a common vision on different global issues, and a shared priority on preservation and defense of sovereignty as a core national value. These elements together point to the possibility of building a much closer relationship. Of course, much work remains to be done to take advantage of the potential of our bilateral relations. From Mexico's side, we need to make a great effort to discover the enormous potential of the Vietnamese market. We also need to institutionalize cooperation with Vietnam in economic, academic, and cultural areas that I would say we have well identified. We also need to strengthen the bilateral legal architecture by concluding pending bilateral agreements that will provide the legal foundation for deeper ties. More specifically, we see strong potential for Mexican companies in areas like machinery and electrical equipment, the pharmaceutical industry, food products and beverages such as mezcal and tequila. We have also enormous bilateral potential cooperation in semiconductors due to the priority that both countries are giving to this sector and the fact that there are very important high-tech Vietnamese companies already established in Mexico. Other area is air connectivity. I believe that we have all the conditions for the opening of a cargo flight from Vietnam to Mexico, considering taking into the growth of taking into account the growth of Vietnamese exports to Mexico and their composition and the opportunities of the Felipe Ángeles International Airport. And there is also a great potential in terms of tourism, infrastructure development, an adequate use of the UNESCO sites that both countries we have, and even the conservation of archaeological sites. Dear friends, I am sure that this seminar will be extraordinarily useful to better understand and define the future topics and issues of the bilateral relationship between Mexico and Vietnam. So from the Mexican Embassy in Hanoi, we are now coordinating a special book of the future of the relations between Mexico and Vietnam in collaboration with the Matias Romero Institute, and we hope to include contributions from this seminar in that book. So thank you very much for your patience, and I wish you much success in the work of this seminar. So sing come on.
Thank you very much for your comprehensive and insightful presentation, Mr. Ambassador Negrín. We now welcome Dr. Alicia Girón, Director of the University Program of Studies on Asia, Africa, and Oceania of the National Autonomous University of Mexico, UNAM, as well as Emeritus Researcher at the Institute of Economic Studies of UNAM. It is an honor to have you with us today, Dr. Alicia Girón. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Pablo. Well, it's an honor for us, for the University Studies Program of Asia, Africa, and Oceania, to be in this conversation with our ambassador, our Mexican ambassador, Alejandro Negrín, and also the Professor Sandang and Lindin, and of course, with our ambassador, our UNAM ambassador, Adalberto Noyola, in China, because he is a real ambassador and he works a lot, and he has been have had the great idea of have this conversation between the VAS and UNAM. So I will just prepare some words, but after this architecture conference that Ambassador Negrín has give us, well, I only would say that, well, it's a profound honor and immense satisfaction for me to extend the warmest and most cordial welcome to this colloquium. Today, we are not just gathered for any event, we are here to celebrate and reflect on a milestone of enormous significance, the 50th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between the United Mexican States and the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. 50 years, half a century of a road travel together, of a friendship that has known how to be born in the distant, mature in trust, and flourish in cooperation. Under the evocative title, 50 Years of Friendship, Future Paths for the Mexico-Vietnam Relationship, this gathering invites us to a twofold task. On one hand, to honor the memory and legacy of those who, with foresight, laid the foundation of this bond, and on the other, to boldly and creatively chart the new routes we must navigate in the decades to come. To understand the magnitude of this anniversary, we must briefly transport ourselves back to 1975. The world was a complex stage, marked by the tensions of the Cold War, at the precise historical moment as Vietnam emerged from a long and painful struggle for its reunification and sovereignty. Mexico, faithful to its diplomatic tradition based on the principles of non-intervention, self-determination of peoples, and the peaceful settlement of controversies, extended its hand as a sign of friendship and recognition. It was an act of Congress and faith in multilateralism, a commitment to building bridges where others saw divisions. That initial gesture, sown on a ground of shared principles, germinated to become the solid and multifaceted partnerships we celebrate today. Since then, we have been witness and protagonists of an extraordinary transformation. What began as a predominantly political tie has diversified into a strategic and dynamic relationship. We have gone from being distant nations to close partners, united not only by oceans, but by common aspirations for development, social justice, and a more equitable international order. The economic pillar of our relationship is, without a doubt, one of the most eloquent statements to this success. The figures, too often impersonal in this case, tell a story of synergies and opportunities, says. Mexico is proud to be today the second commercial partners of Vietnam in all of Latin America, and reciprocally, Vietnam has consolidated its position as our 8th largest trading partner globally, a first-rate economic ally in the vibrant region of Saudi Asia. The powerful flow of trade, which last year exceeded $14 billion, well, Ambassador said $15 billion, has been catalyzed by our joint membership in the CPTPP, Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. This agreement is not just a tariff framework, it is a state-of-the-art integration platform that has aligned our economies and opened doors to more sophisticated value chains in key sectors such as automotive, electronic, textiles, and agro industry. And also one of the things that is very important is that we also are in the club of APEC. But we have a very close relations, and also we admire how Vietnam, with all the structural reforms, the Doi Moi process, the economic renewal that initiated in the 1980s, it's a global case study of how a nation can open up to the world, unleash its productive potential, and in the process, lift tens of millions of its citizens out of poverty. I only want to take to give some data that I was seeing just early morning, that it was from the International Monetary Fund that the GDP this year it was around 7%, and now with all the transformation in our economy since Trump arrived to the president of USA and the Liberation Day, well, the outlook of Vietnam is 6.9, while Mexico is less than 1%. And I have some data here that it's very important. I was just trying to see how we are in the global gender gap. As feminist economists, I'm going to take only 2 scores. We are in the global gender gap. Mexico is in the 23rd level, while Vietnam is in the 74th level. And one of the things that it is very important, for example, the economic participation of women, Vietnam is in the 25th level. So women are really inside the economy. And in Mexico, we are in 113 level. But another thing that I think that it is very important to say is political empowerment. And this is very important for Mexico and also for Vietnam. In Mexico, we are in the level 9. Last year, we were in the 14th score, and Vietnam is 95 this year, and it was 96. Well, with this, thank you very much, and I'm very glad to be here, Ambassador Alejandro Negrín, and also with these great people that are in our presidium. Thank you very much, and good morning, Vietnam, and good afternoon, Mexico. Buenos días, Vietnam. Buenas noches, Mexico. Gracias.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alicia Girón, for your insightful presentation. Next, we invite Dr. Adalberto Noyola, the director of our center, director of the UNAM Representative Office in China, Center for Mexican Studies, to share your remarks. Please take the floor, Dr. Noyola.
Thank you very much, Pablo. Ambassador Alejandro Negrín, Dr. Sang Minh Duc, Deputy General Director of the Institute for European and American Studies of the Vietnamese Academy of Social Sciences, Dr. Alicia Girón, Coordinator of the Program on Asia, Studies of Asia, Africa, and Oceania. Good morning to all our colleagues and friends in Vietnam and East Asia, and good evening to those joining us from Mexico and Latin America. It is a great honor to extend a warm welcome to all of you to the academic dialogue, Mexico-Vietnam, 50 years of friendship, future paths for the bilateral relationship. This event is organized by the National Autonomous University of Mexico, UNAM, the Vietnam Academy of Social Sciences, and the Embassy of Mexico in Vietnam, together with the Program of Studies of Asia, Africa, and Oceania. Today, we come together to reflect on 5 decades of diplomatic relations between our two countries and to explore new avenues for cooperation, particularly in the academic, scientific, and technological spheres. Over the past 50 years, Mexico and Vietnam have forged a strong and friendly relationship, one in which academic dialogue should play an increasing role. Vietnam's impressive economic growth, consistently above 7% of GDP over the past 3 decades, and its expanding trade relations with Latin America, particularly Mexico, reflect the dynamic nature of our bilateral ties. While there is currently a trade deficit on the Mexican side, this also represents valuable business opportunity for Mexican enterprises, as just was mentioned before. Geographically, Mexico and Vietnam face each other across the Pacific Ocean. We can imagine a symbolic bridge between Latin America and Southeast Asia. This position both countries in a strategic role as a regional leaders. To realize this potential, we must strengthen cooperation across multiple dimensions. Among these, education, science, and technology stands out as a promising field for win-win collaboration. In this regard, academic exchange is not just beneficial, it is strategic. It enables the creation of shared knowledge, prepares future generations with a global outlook, and fosters stronger ties between our academic institutions. More importantly, it helps generate positive social and economic outcomes for both our nations. UNAM and VAS have already taken important steps in this direction. In 2022 and 2023, we co-organized 2 seminars focusing on cross-border relations with our respective northern neighbors. Last year, we held a joint academic dialogue on some items on the agenda of the 2024 Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum. We highlight the support of the Mexican Embassy in Vietnam, which has been a key partner in these academic events. Today, we gather on a special occasion marking the 50th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between our two countries. To commemorate this milestone, the Institute of European and American Studies of VAS and UNAM's Program of Studies of Africa, Asia, and Oceania have prepared a high-level seminar featuring distinguished experts from both institutions. They will address key challenges facing our nation and explore opportunities for cooperation in science and technology. At UNAM, we believe deeply that knowledge is a powerful instrument for international cooperation and peace, especially in these uncertain times. Both Vietnam and Mexico are developing countries confronting common challenges, improving infrastructure, promoting social welfare, reducing poverty, and protecting the environment, among many others. There is much we can learn from each other and much we can achieve together. We are confident that this seminar marks the beginning of a new stage in our academic partnership. Despite linguistic and cultural differences, we are committed to deepening our collaboration in education, science, and technology, foundations for the sustainable development of both countries and their people. On behalf of UNAM, I wish to sincerely thank all the speakers and partner institutions who have contributed with their time, knowledge, and commitments to make this important dialogue possible. We trust that today's exchanges will spark new ideas and initiatives to further strengthen the bonds of friendship and cooperation between Mexico and Vietnam. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adalberto Noyola. And next, to conclude this brief yet significant opening ceremony, we give the floor to Dr. Zhang Mingzung, Deputy General Director of the Institute for European and American Studies at the Vietnam Academy of Social Sciences.
Thank you. In the form of Vietnam, good morning, everyone. Good morning, dear Mr. Alejandro, Negrín, and Master in Mexico, in Vietnam, and Dr. Alejandro, Director in University Program Study in Asia and Africa in Oceania in UNAM. in the Dr. Neograna Director, UNAM-China, and good morning, everyone. On the behalf of the Institute Urban American Study, it's a great honor and warmly welcome all we are participating in the meaningful online seminar, 50-year friendship in the future part of Mexico-Vietnam relation. This seminar marked important in the strengthen relation between us, our two nations, especially between our research and economy institute and the university. This collaborative is a ratio in the long-term standing partnership between institutes, Urban America Study, and Mexico, and policy in Vietnam and nation UNAM, Mexico. We are especially grateful support from the Mexican embassy in Vietnam. Embassy's support play a role help with us this joint seminar now. Today's this seminar scholar with between the introduced Urban and America Study and UNAM will discussion in important topic from contemporary challenges in the Mexico in the Vietnam relation. Include global church restructuring opportunity in the cooperation in the science and technology in the Southern. The discussion in important negative rapid changing war seek to strengthen bilateral tie. This even beginning increasingly deep and developing cooperative relationship between institutes, European and America Study and UNAM, Mexico. We are discussing commission promoting academic exchange generation evident by insight. I identify new avenue in the multi-benefit cooperation. I will in the cinema contribute the knowledge and strengthen Mexico in Vietnam relation in the decade in the future. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zhang Minzuk, and all speakers for your inspiring words, which mark the beginning of the seminar. We now open the first panel of the day with the theme Contemporary Challenges in Mexico-Vietnam Relations, to be presented by Dr. Pablo Ramírez and Dr. Dinh Thi Thuy Linh, and moderated by Iván Antonino Sosa Espinosa, Head of the Economic Section and International Cooperation at the Mexican Embassy in Vietnam. Mr. Sosa, please proceed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning here in Vietnam and good evening in Mexico. As Pablo was mentioned, it is my great honor to conduct the work of this first panel, whose title is Contemporary Challenges in Mexico and Vietnam Relations. And we will have two presentations, one from Dr. Dinh Thi Thuy Linh, and the other will be from Dr. Pablo Ramírez. Before giving the floor to Dr. Pablo Ramírez for his presentation, please allow me to share some of details of him. Dr. Pablo Ramírez holds a Bachelor in Journalism and Communication from Minh University in Taiwan, an MA in Contemporary Asian Studies from the University of Amsterdam, and a PhD in Thai Studies from Chulalongkorn University. He is currently part of the University Program of Studies on Africa, Asia, and Oceania of the Coordination of Humanities of the National Autonomous University of Mexico, where he is a researcher focusing on Thailand and Southeast Asia. And his presentation will deal with global trade reconfiguration, Mexico and Vietnam amidst China's commercial displacements in the U.S. market. Please, Dr. Pablo Ramírez, you have the floor.
Thank you, Iván. Thank you, everyone, for inviting me to participate in this very interesting talk. It's a pleasure for me to be here tonight or tomorrow morning with you in Vietnam. So let me share my screen for this presentation. Can you see it now? Yeah.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Okay, excellent. So basically what I would like to present today is how both Mexico and Vietnam have benefited from the commercial disputes between the US and China, which both of these two countries represent very important markets for our countries. So in the last 20 years, 25 years, globalization has been rampant around the world, and this has basically given the economic rise of China. However, today we can see that according to an Ipsos survey, only 48% of respondents in 25 countries around the world believe that globalization is good for their country. And as we can see, also around 37% of the respondents believe that there should be more tariffs to limit the import of goods and services from abroad. This has been accentuated since China has become the world's leading producer and exporter of manufactured goods. And it's because the Chinese Communist Party basically has played the rules differently. You know, it supports Chinese producers and exporters in ways that far exceeds the aid in the rest of the world, and it has made them gain a lot of advantages. So what has happened is that since these last 20 years, we have seen that the Chinese and the US economic relationship has been more and more tense. And in 2018, when President Trump arrived to power in his first term, he decided to impose tariffs for the first time on Chinese goods. So before that, in 2017, we could see that the tariffs on Chinese goods were around 3.1%. And by September 2019, that went up to 21%. In May 2024, the Biden administration decided to actually impose more tariffs across sectors that the Americans considered key to their country. And among those were steel and aluminum that went up to 25%, semiconductors and solar cells that increased to 50%, batteries for electric vehicles also increased to 25%, and electric vehicles as a whole, who actually got an increase of 100% on their products. Basically, this economic situation, this economic sanction, basically had a huge blow on Chinese products in the United States market. As you can see, in 2017, Chinese products represented 21.9% of all the imports into America. Mexican products at the same time were 13.1%, and Vietnam products represented 2% of the whole imports into the US market. When the tariffs came into place last year, China became actually, the good of Chinese goods were represented 14.1%. Mexico took the lead as the first exporter to the American market with 15.1% of the goods represented there. And Vietnam actually almost doubled, went to 3.7% of the goods in the American market. What does this mean? We talk a lot here in Mexico about this nearshoring or wave that has happened thanks to the tariffs imposed and into Chinese markets. And also, basically, the US now is trying to shift its supply chains away from China to low-cost production countries considered friendly, and this is where Vietnam and Mexico fall. Vietnam has been a significant beneficiary of this policy shift, even though its initial market share was smaller than Mexico before the trade sanctions were imposed on imports from China. As you can see, here is the total value of these imports across time, and it's in billions of dollars. Sorry, in Mexico we don't use billions because billions is a million of millions, so it's a little bit confusing when you translate it into English. But in 2023, Vietnamese goods basically overpassed $100 billion. And for Mexico, we almost reached $500 billion US dollars as a share of imports. And this is very important because, as you can see, the reduction of Chinese goods in the American market is around 21% almost, while imports of Mexican origin rose 38.21%. And Vietnam had a huge gain. I mean, they went for 43.74 billion in 2016 to a peak of 135.87 billion US dollars in 2022. This means an increase of 310%, which is massive for the Vietnamese economy. So to better understand this competition, I mean, in the paper, I analyze many more sectors, but because of time constrictions, we're only going to focus here on two sectors that are quite important in the United States, which is the metal mechanic industry, which is the most important sectors of US imports, and the electronic industry, sector 85. So they represent 15% and 14% respectively of US imports in general. So sector 84, the metal mechanic industry, in 2023, this sector accounted for around 14% of total US imports, with a total value of 459.2 billion. These machinery-related changes in the market access chapter have seen little change recently, but because of how many products in gold says, we can say that the biggest effect is on the rules of origin. So here, for example, we can see sometimes the steel and aluminum plays a big role, even for the Mexican economy. So the sector has received a lot of tariffs across the products. The one that was very important was, for example, washing machines, who received a lot, like I think 50% tariff exclusively on that product, and Vietnam benefited a lot from it. And this basically is important because Mexico, as aluminum and steel producing country, has actually had to take the economic blow that some of the new tariffs implemented by the second Trump administration have implemented now. So as you can see here, the figures of what the shares of the U.S. imports in sector 84 represented in the last 20 years. Vietnam, for example, in 2004 had almost zero market share in the U.S. with this sector. However, by 2023, it almost it was around 4%. Mexico rose from 10% to around 17, 18%. And China has been plunging since basically 2020 very sharply, going from a maximum of 34% to a little bit under 20%. Yeah, this is it. And this is basically very important sector. Also is sector 85, electronic industry, which corresponds to products in the electronics industry. Basically, it includes two sectors that are considered key by the US administration: solar panels and semiconductors. This sector in 2023 accounted for 15% of total US imports, with a total value of $463.36 billion US. So what happens is in 2018, President Trump announced that he will impose tariffs on imports of solar panels and modules for 4 years. The Biden administration decided to extend these tariffs, although signing a 2-year exemption for products for countries basically in Southeast Asia: Cambodia, Malaysia, Vietnam, and Thailand. And this was valid from May 2022 to May 2024. This measure was taken to create a bridge while the US manufacturing increased sufficiently to be able to supply the domestic projects needed to meet climate change goals. This was very beneficial for Vietnam. We will see later on, because Vietnam produces the big majority of solar panels in Southeast Asia. In addition, the Biden administration announced increased tariffs on semiconductors from China, rising them from 25% to 50% by 2025. And according to the White House, China will account for almost half of all semiconductors and microchip manufacturing capacity in the next 5 years. So in order to try to contain that and to develop local semiconductor production, these kind of tariffs were implemented. And as you can see here again, how much it represents in the shares of the US market for this sector 85. China went from over 40% a maximum in 2018 to a little bit like 27% in 2023. And again, Vietnam in the last 12 years, from 2013, has steadily been gaining market share in this sector in America, with a peak of almost 10% in 2022. And Mexico has been very stable, actually even losing some of its market share, and is right now around 18% of this. So yeah, what happens is once the various tariff came into force, Chinese products lost market share year by year. And basically now they account to 27.34% of the total US imports in the electronic industry. And here for Mexico, despite the significant loss of Chinese products, we cannot take advantage. We haven't taken advantage because it's not a sector in which we have invested much. And basically the graph shows that in the last 20 years, the market share of Mexican product has always been around 18 or 19%. However, as I was mentioning before, products originating from Vietnam accounted of basically almost 0.03% in 2004, and reached almost 10% in 2022. Basically, this has been possible because Vietnam has heavily invested in solar panel and semiconductor industries. Today, around 10% of the world's photovoltaic cells, and modules are manufactured in Southeast Asia, and around half of these are made in Vietnam, making it the leading producer in the region. On the microprocessor side, the Vietnamese government has announced an ambitious long-term project to turn the country into an international hub for high-quality chips production by 2050. The government hopes to establish at least 300 chip design companies, 3 manufacturing plants, and 20 packaging and testing facilities, as well as train more than 100,000 engineers specialized in this industry. And this has basically been a plan that has already been running for a few years. So you are gaining already, you have an advantage over Mexico. It's only, I think, end of last year or early this year that our president announced also the intention of start semiconductor production in Mexico. And so now we have to play catch up with Vietnam on these industries. So yeah, this US-China trade war has opened up new business opportunities for Mexico and Vietnam. Clearly, there has been an advantage to these nearshoring and or ally shoring policies implemented by the US government, which have benefited both our countries. And the exit, basically, it has allowed us the opportunity to diversify the exposure to supply chain disruption by investing in factories and production lines closer to the US market. For Mexico, the nearshoring phenomenon represents an opportunity to raise its profile in terms of attracting foreign investment, increasing the value of its exports, and thus creating new jobs. However, it must be admitted that for the moment, these opportunities do not seem to be the result of planned government strategy to maximize its profits, but rather the simple geographical proximity of the country to its northern neighbor. It is true that Mexico has gained some of the market shares left vacant by the withdrawal of Chinese products from the US market, but these are still products that Mexico has been producing in established industries for many years. On the other hand, we have Vietnam, who has been able to take advantage of the opportunities presented by the international geopolitical situation to develop long-term economic development plans in industries with high current and future demand, such as renewable energy and semiconductors. As Vietnam and the rest of ASEAN countries are considered friendly to the United States, it is normal for the US to seek to supply its market needs there, while its local industry manages to produce what it needs for its own consumption. Of course, this has been basically developed before the Trump administration implemented new tariffs. So we don't really know. Both our countries, both the governments of Mexico and Vietnam are still struggling with the rest of the world to negotiate trade agreements with the Trump administration. We don't really know what impact these new tariffs are going to have on our economic, on all these sectors and all these industries, especially, for example, textile industry, which I don't have the time to also present tonight, which are both important for our countries. But we can see that we are two economies that are benefiting from the Chinese-US trade war, but we need to remain basically also very aware of what happens in the next few months. Mexico, the US, and Canada will go into negotiation for the TMEC, USMCA, and we don't really know how that is going to come out and how our trade with our northern neighbor will follow. So it's very interesting to see that now Vietnam and Mexico are also competing in the economic, even though we're very far away, we're competing for the same market, which represents one of our most strategic allies, economic allies. And the new geopolitical situation is very uncertain for both of us. So thank you. This will be it for me tonight. And I'm looking forward to the discussion after the presentation of Dr. Minh.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pablo Ramírez. Indeed, it was very insightful and meaningful presentation with all this, I mean, all the landscape and the scenario that is bring us to up to date. So I think that it will contribute a lot to this academic dialogue that now we will continue with Dr. Dinh Thi Thuy Linh. And she entitled her presentation, "The Current State of Economic Relations Between Vietnam and Mexico in the Recent Years." So please, before giving her the floor, just allow me to share that Dr. Dinh Thi Thuy Linh is a researcher specializing in international economics with a particular focus on economic relations between Vietnam and the Americas. She holds a PhD in economics from the Graduate Academy of Social Science in Vietnam and a master's degree in the International Economics and Finance from Bournemouth University in UK, where she graduated with distinction. Dr. Linh has published extensively in journals such as Americas Today, Asian Pacific Economic Review, Communist Review, and the Vietnam Economic Times. She is currently a researcher at the Center for Latin America Studies and the Institute for European and American Studies, where she conducts policy-relevant studies and advises on economic cooperation initiatives. With a strong background in data analysis and academic consulting, she also engages in conferences and workshops in both national and international levels, as this seminar tonight. So please, Dr. Linh, I will give you the floor.
Hello.
Yes, Dr. Linh.
Good morning, Vietnam, and good evening, fellows from Mexico. So, dear Ambassador, dear Dr. Alicia Girón, Dr. Adalberto from UNAM, and dear Dr. Minh from Institute for Americas and European Study. So, just wait for me to share my slide. So today I would like to give a brief description of the current state of economic relations between Vietnam and Mexico in recent years. So we know that Vietnam and Mexico have established diplomatic relations in 1975, marking the beginning of a long-standing partnership that has gradually expanded across multiple sectors. In the field of economics, both countries have increasingly recognized the importance of enhancing bilateral cooperation, especially in the context of globalization and regional economic integration. As member of the CPTPP, both countries enjoy preferential trade terms, which have significantly contributed to the growth of bilateral trade. And over the past decade, two-way trade has increased steadily, with Vietnam becoming one of Mexico's key trading partners in Southeast Asia, and Mexico also ranking among Vietnam's top trade partners in Americas. In addition to trade and investment, both governments have worked to strengthen economic cooperation through high-level visits, trade promotion activities, and participation in multilateral forums such as APEC and WTO. About the bilateral trade, we have witnessed a significant transformation in the bilateral trade between Vietnam and Mexico. In 2023, Vietnam export to Mexico reached approximately $9.85 billion. And conversely, Mexico export to Vietnam were valued at $214 million. The primary export from Vietnam to Mexico include integrated circuit, broadcasting equipment, office machine parts, And the main export from Mexico to Vietnam comprise of integrated circuits, broadcasting equipment. And we can see that like in 2018, the total trade turnover was only 5 billion, more than 5 billion. But now in 2023, it has increased to more than 10 billion. And so Vietnam export growth rate from 2018 to 2023 from 3.98 billion to 9.85 billion, reflecting a growth rate of 19.9% annually. And we can also see that Vietnam enjoyed the trade surplus. As a member of CPTPP, we have enhanced the bilateral trade by reducing tariff and non-tariff barriers. And under the agreement, Mexico has committed to eliminating import duties on 77% of tariff flags, covering 36.5% of its import value from Vietnam, with plans to increase it to 98% by the 10th year of the agreement. So we can see that the trade side has seen a lot of growth. However, on the investment side, it remains rather modest from the potential of both countries. But we still have some developments here. Like in 2023, Vietnam witnessed the establishment of subsidiary by two big companies. The first one is FPT Software, which is a top IT service provider. And the second one is Formula Air, an air conditioning system manufacturer. At the same time, Mexican company Kidzania also inaugurated an entertainment center in Hanoi. This reflects Mexico's growing interest in the Vietnamese market. And both Vietnam and Mexico has identified several sectors with high potential for investment. The first one is high-tech agriculture. With Vietnam's advancement in agricultural technology, present an opportunities for Mexican firms to invest in sustainable farming practices and agro-processing industry. Telecommunication and IT, given Vietnam's growing digital economy, there's potential for collaboration in this area. In terms of the energy sector, particularly the renewable energy, this sector offers avenue for joint ventures and investment, and this aligns with both countries' sustainability goals. In terms of manufacturing and electronics, Mexico's expertise in manufacturing complements Vietnam's capabilities, creating opportunities for joint production facilities and supply chain partnerships. And in 2024, the Mexican embassy in Vietnam, along with the Business Council for Foreign Trade and the National Bank for Foreign Trade, launched the Vietnam for Mexican Companies a Business Guide. This guide provides comprehensive information on Vietnam's investment climate, legal framework, and sector opportunities, aiming to assist Mexican business in exploring the Vietnamese market. So we can see that like the trade between Vietnam and Mexico has flourished over times, but the bilateral investment relationships remain rather modest. So I think it's a point that we need to focus on. And even though we have achieved a lot, and we have a lot of positive developments. There are several challenges that can hinder the acceleration of bilateral trade between the two countries. And the first one is about the tariff and non-tariff barriers. So we know that both countries are members of CPTPP, and this has had to eliminate the majority of tariffs. However, non-tariff barriers remain a significant impediment. The complex rule of origin under the CPTPP requires firms to meet specific production or value addition criteria, which can be burdensome for small and medium enterprises in both countries. Differences in technical standards, labeling requirements, and custom procedure can also lead to delay, higher compliance costs, and limited product acceptance. In certain sectors, sanitary and phytosanitary measures and product certifications are not harmonized, particularly in food, agriculture, pharmaceutical goods. This creates additional burdens for exporters. About the logistic and connectivity constraint, due to the geographical distance between Vietnam and Mexico, we are like so far apart. So this creates like logistical challenges in facilitating smooth trade between two countries. Currently, there's no direct sea or air freight route linking the two countries. Goods are often shipped to third countries, for example, the US or Singapore, which increase shipping times and costs, undermining the price competitiveness of export. Also, limited maritime cooperation agreements and underdeveloped logistical hubs reduce efficiency in the transportation of goods. Custom clearance and lack of digital integration in port operations also hinder supply chain coordination, particularly for time-sensitive products such as seafood, fruits, or textile. The third challenge is the cultural differences and market unfamiliarity. Despite our mutual interest in economic expansion, cultural and business environment differences still create obstacles for deeper engagement. Vietnamese firms often lack detailed knowledge of Mexico regulatory system, consumer behavior, and market dynamic, and vice versa.
Excuse me, Lynn. I think you are changing your. We are seeing the same.
Yeah.
Points.
Yeah. I know, because I just live on the key things for the challenges.
Okay.
In details.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. The last one. Yeah. I'm talking about the cultural differences and market unfamiliarity. So because like the two sides will lack information about the regulatory system, consumer behavior, and market dynamic. So we lack information to have deeper market access. Also, we have different business culture, which may make the relationship between firms become hard to establish. And we also have like the language barriers and limited Spanish, Vietnamese, bilingual personnel further complicate direct communication and partnership formation. Okay, so Dr. Alicia, you're seeing the slide about challenges, right? Or like another slide? About the opportunities, because we will have second panels about the opportunities, so I will not go into too much details, but I think that both countries have a lot of potential, and Vietnam can serve as a gateway for Mexico to ASEAN, and also Mexico can serve as a North American hub And we have a lot of promising sectors such as green energy, education, or fintech. They are very promising. They are great for our sustainability goal. So I think that if we can overcome the challenges, we will have a lot of opportunities to promote our trade and investment furthermore. And with continued support from both government, active engagement from the private sector, and strategic use of multilateral frameworks, the economic relationship between Vietnam and Mexico is certainly poised to deepen further in the coming year. And this will bring mutual benefits and contribute to the regional and global economic integration. So that's all my presentation. Thank you for your listening.
Thank you very much to you, Dr. Lin. Also, a very clear presentation of the bilateral relations. So we have enough time to pass to the questions and answers. So if please, if any member of the people who is connected in Zoom who wants to present or to make a question to the panelists, now you have the opportunity. If you let me know. Okay. Well, I think that the two presentations are complementary. I feel that the presentation of Dr. Lin will give us a huge and a good panorama of the framework and the relationship and how this economic relationship between Mexico and Vietnam have grown significantly, especially since 2018 until now. And that we are seeing that with the CPTPP, because the CPTPP entered into effect for both countries in 2019, so it might have an impact on this growth of the bilateral exchanges. And on the other hand, also Dr. Pablo Ramírez also make us the landscape of the global economy and the challenge and the tensions between United States and China that also might be a factor for this growing and connection. So I would like to present just a question to both of you in the terms that you both mentioned in the opportunities and the challenges that both economists are having. For instance, one specific sector that is the semiconductor, in the sense that this perhaps the companies who are also benefiting of these economic exchanges that are present, multilateral companies I'm talking, that are present in Mexico and that are present in Vietnam, they are benefiting on the exchange. Perhaps viewed that the fact that the main, for instance, product exchange between the countries was integrated circuits. So and the presence already of FPT in Mexico, or some companies that might go to that sector, and also related with the plan of Mexico that they are trying to merge this calling of and impulse the sector of semiconductor. Perhaps just the question simple is there, if you see an opportunity of cooperation of Mexico taking or learning from the experience of Vietnam on developing semiconductors and zonal partners on energy renewable, and a matching with the plan of Mexico to make that this presence of the companies in both countries might interact and continue growing the exchange in the bilateral arena. So I don't know.
I can start if you want.
Okay, thank you, Doctor.
Yeah, I think we can learn a lot from the Vietnamese experience on the semiconductors, because well, this is my personal point of view, but I think Mexico should organize its semiconductor development plan in the same way Vietnam did, which is not only the government side, but we need to talk, of course, with the industry side and with the education side. Because in order to produce high quality semiconductors, you need to have very qualified people in engineering. And so we need to be able to provide the engineers that will work in these semiconductor plants in the future. So the way Vietnam has done its semiconductor plan is very interesting because it's this tripartite integration for it. So you have the government, you have the private industry, and you have the education sector. And I think we have to do the same thing. The thing is, for us, we are now competing with Vietnam, with Malaysia, of course, with Taiwan and China, which have at least 20 years of expertise in this field. So it's not going to be very easy for us to catch up in this very strategic sector, but we have to do it anyway. And renewables, the renewable sector had a very complicated 6 years, well, from 2018 to 2024 with the previous presidency, because it was completely ignored. So again, we need to relaunch this almost, I will not say from zero, but we lost a lot of time. And this is something that, yeah, it's going to be very hard to catch up with Vietnam because, yeah, Vietnam has a huge international market share in this industry. But we will see. I mean, of course, we can learn a lot, and we should not pass this opportunity that we have now that to collaborate with our Vietnamese colleagues.
Thank you very much. Dr. Lin, you have also an insight. You talk also about cooperation in, for instance, education. So might be a sector in this part of the education, semiconductors cooperation.
Okay, so first of all, I totally agree with Dr. Pablo. He talked about the personnel, like for technology and semiconductor industry, we really need like to have really good talent. And I would like to provide some information first about the integrated circuits. In 2023, Vietnam like exported about like more than $30 billion integrated circuits, and making us the 8th largest exporter of integrated circuits. And we also import a lot, like more than 36 billion. And we are also a very large importer of this because we have some company like Samsung and HP. So we have like some advantages in this area, and we are doing good, I think. And I think that with Mexico, because we export a lot to Mexico, I think that is an area that we can continue to deepen into that area, and we have a lot of growth for that one. And about the education, so you know that like Vietnam, we have a lot of students coming to the US, and even though we have the same geographical distance, I think that we can have a lot of Vietnamese students coming to Mexico if we have the support from the government, from the institutes, from the organization, and from university like UNAM. You know, if you have the programs, and I think that the student here will love to go there because they can go to the US with the same distance, so they can definitely go to Mexico as well. And at the same time, we will have like different programs in Vietnam for Mexican students to come here and learn in our environment. So I think there are a lot of potential for that. And I think what we are doing here is creating a foundation or maybe a start to that.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much. Exactly. This is indeed the purpose of this this academic dialogues, is to create and to know where we have potential for opportunity, and exactly The second and last question that I would like to share with you is from Cesar Ramírez, that he will ask you which could be the main area of opportunity for both countries to strengthen the cooperation and investment, and if you see the both economies as a complementary economy in some way. Perhaps you now can take the floor, Dr. Lin.
Okay, so about the areas that we can strengthen, I think it's still what we are doing now. Like the integrated circuits is what we export to and from a lot at the moment. So I think it's still the area that we can further strengthen to have our trade and investment. And I do think that Vietnam and Mexico has some complementary, because we are quite different in a lot of aspects. So I think these differences will serve as a complement to each other. Like Vietnam, we have the advantages in some areas such as agriculture, and telecommunications. We have we have a young labor force at the moment, and we have a big market. And I think, yeah, we will be complement to each other.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Yes, Dr. Pablo. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's the areas of opportunity for both our countries are in the classical sectors, you know, like tourism and agriculture products and this kind of things that we haven't explored that much. The problem we have always with Southeast Asia from Mexico is the distance, and because we share a lot of very similar things, culturally speaking, like in the food and everything, but the distance and the fact that, at least in Mexico, it seems so far away and so foreign that very few industries try to go there. You know, unfortunately, we are too US oriented, and this is our reality. So I think there are a lot of opportunities for Mexican industries in Southeast Asia and in Vietnam, but we just need the willingness from these companies to go and explore the markets over there.
Okay, well, thank you very much to both of you. I think that we have a lot of information to think about this relation and what we have as challenges and opportunities to face in the future, also for the government's work, and also from the companies from both countries' work, and also from the scenario that also the multinational companies presented and in both Mexico and Vietnamese market are also perceiving as opportunities and challenges in this scenario and this world. So I just want to thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. Thank you for this very fruitful and vivid dialogue. So we will now pass to the second panel, which title is Opportunities for Cooperation in Science and Technology in the Global South, Mexico and Vietnam. And I will give the floor for the next moderator, that is, I think, Dr. Minh Duc, for continuing conducting this second panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Iván, for your moderation, and also to Professors Pablo Ramírez and Dr. Dinh Thi Thuy Linh. On behalf of the General Director of the Institute for European and American Studies, Dr. Tang will moderate the last panel. Dr. Hyung Nguyen, that is the manager of the International Cooperation Office of her institute. So we give the floor to Dr. Hyung Nguyen. Please, doctor. Thank you very much.
Good evening in Hello, and good evening in Mexico. Today I am very proud to. It is my pleasure to give the moderation for the second panel of our discussion today. Opportunities for cooperation in science and technology in the global south between Mexico and Vietnam. As you know, there are promising opportunities for scientific and technological cooperation between two countries, with potential benefit for both nations. And now I would like to invite Dr. Netibanya, Director of Centers for Latin American Studies. She experienced researchers conducting research in Latin American study in our institutes. Dr. Netibanya, please make the invitation. Make presentation, please.
Hi. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear.
Good day to distinguished guests and friends joining us from Vietnam and Mexico. It's a great honor for me to be here today to share some key insights on Vietnam-Mexico economic relation in the comprehensive and progressive agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership era, focusing on field of science and technology. First of all, CPTPP is one of the most ambitious free trade agreement, bringing together 11 economies that account for around 13% of global GDP. Despite the geographical distance and cultural differences, Vietnam and Mexico have emerged as increasingly dynamic partners within this framework. Since the agreement came into effect, bilateral trade has expanded rapidly, exceeding $10 billion, with Vietnam maintaining a trade surplus. The CPTPP opens up wide-ranging opportunity for both countries, not only in trade and investment, but also in areas such as technology transfer and scientific collaboration. However, challenge remains include non-tariff barriers, regulatory gaps, and the still modest level of cooperation in science and innovation. This presentation aims to provide.
Excuse me, Dr. Nga, your presentation is not running.
Oh, it's not running.
It's not running.
It's not
so
running.
If you, if you can,
okay.
Exactly, that's it. Sorry.
Oh, can you see? Oh,
yeah.
Can
we
you
can
see?
see.
Yeah. Okay. So this presentation aims to provide a concise overview of Vietnam and Mexico economic ties under the CPTPP, highlight key opportunities and constraints, and propose strategic direction, especially in advancing scientific and technological cooperation for deepening future bilateral relations. So I will present overview of
Vietnam and Mexico relations. Vietnam and Mexico established diplomatic ties on 1975, laying the groundwork for a relationship built on mutual respect and cooperation. Both countries have actively engaged in multilateral forums such as the UN, APEC, and FBA-LAC, consistently supporting each other position. Politically, relationship is characterized by constructive dialogue and shared commitments to sustainable development. Economic cooperation has expanded steadily, especially since the CPTPP came into effect, with Mexico emerging as a key trade partner of Vietnam in Latin America. Beyond trade, both sides have made efforts in education, cultural exchange, and increasingly scientific and technological collaboration and area with a high potential to shape the next phase of the partnership. And since the CPTPP took effect, bilateral trade between Vietnam and Mexico has grown rapidly, driven by tariff reductions and improved market access. In 2024, two-way trade reached $15 billion, up 27.5% from 2023. Mexico is now Vietnam's second largest trading partner in Latin America and is leading export destination in the region. Vietnam's key export to Mexico in 2023 include integrated circuit, about $2.63 billion, broadcasting equipment, and office machine parts. In contrast, Mexico's export to Vietnam remains modest at $214 million, less by integrated circuits and broadcasting equipment. While trade continues to expand, the balance is heavily tilted in Vietnam's favor. The CPTPP has been instrumental in enhancing Vietnam's export competitiveness in the Mexican market. Vietnam's stronger export growth reflects its significant potential in technology and electronic sectors. Here's some picture about Vietnam and Mexico export and imports. Bilateral investment remain modest, but it's showing positive momentum. In 2023, Vietnamese firms such as FPT Software and Formula Air enter the Mexican market, while Mexico's Kidjania launched operations in Hanoi. This move marked the early stage of two-way investment in and growing business confidence. Key sectors with strong potential include manufacturing, agriculture, digital service, and logistics. The CPTPP's provision on investment protection and dispute resolution offer a more secure legal environment for investors on both sides. Here's some opportunities from CPTPP for Vietnam, and bilateral investment remains modest, but it's showing positive momentum. In 2023, Vietnamese firms such as FPT Software and preferential access to high potential markets through elimination of most tariff, and secondly, opportunity from the CPTPP for Vietnam boost export of key sectors: textile, footwear, seafood, and wooden furniture. Reinforce Vietnam's commitment to reform and global integration, enhancing investor confidence. Encourage foreign investment by offering stable, transparent trade and legal frameworks. Fifthly, drives domestic reform in governance, transparency, IP rights, labor standards, and environmental regulations. Sixth, promotes Vietnam integration into regional and global value chains, especially in industrial manufacturing, agro processing, and logistics. And seven, stimulate innovation and improvement in product quality as Vietnamese firms face increased competition. Support economic diversification and help Vietnam reduce reliance on traditional markets. And for Mexico, some opportunities from CPTPP as following. First of all, preferential access to new market. For example, Australia, Brunei, Malaysia, New Zealand, Singapore, and Vietnam, totaling over 155 million consumers. CPTPP expect to increase Mexico export by 6.7%, especially in automobiles and auto parts, machinery, leather goods, beef, processed food, fruits, and vegetables. Vietnam emerged as a significant trade partner under CPTPP with potential for exporting agricultural products to Vietnam. Assessing Vietnam's growing consumer market, CPTPP help diversify export markets, reducing reliance on the US and mitigating global market risks. Opens door for Mexican manufacturers to expand reach in the Asia-Pacific region. Digital trade, intellectual property and investment protection provisions create a more stable and favorable business environment. Vietnam's market of over 100 million people present long-term growth potential for agri-industrial and technology sectors. The CPTPP facilitates two-way investment by combining Vietnam's manufacturing strength with Mexico's innovation capabilities, creating opportunities for joint ventures and supply chain integration across Southeast Asia. I will talk something about science and technology cooperation in CPTPP, and both Vietnam and Mexico are pursuing digital transformation, green technology, and innovation-driven development. However, scientific and technological cooperation remain limited despite shared interests and CPTPP framework support. Some key barriers to S&T collaboration, lack of institutional exchange mechanism, minimum joint R&D initiative, and weak academic and university linkage, differences in innovation ecosystem and regulatory frameworks, language and communication challenges. There remains significant untapped potential for cooperation in smart agriculture, agri-tech, renewable energy, and clean technologies. Here's some key barriers in Vietnam-Mexico economic relation. Despite robust trade growth under the CPTPP, Vietnam and Mexico face persistent barriers to deeper economic integration. Trade defense, investigation, technical standards, and custom procedure continue to affect exporters on both sides. Vietnamese firms must comply with strict safety labeling and hygiene regulations, while Mexican exporters face complex quarantine and import controls in Vietnam. Logistic challenges such as long shipping time, high transport costs also hinder trade expansion. Infrastructure in southern Mexico remains underdeveloped, require great investment and improved security. Importantly, science and technology cooperation remain a major untapped area. There are few joint research projects, limited institution linkage, and no dedicated bilateral frameworks to promote innovation. Without stronger collaboration in areas like agri-tech, renewable energy, and digital transformation, both countries risk missing valuable opportunities to diversify and upgrade their economic ties. and I will show some policy implication. To advance bilateral ties, Vietnam and Mexico should prioritize science and technology as a core pillar of cooperation. This includes institutionalizing policy dialogue on innovation, aligning legal frameworks, and accelerating mutual recognition of standards to facilitate technology transfer and digital trade. Joint R&D funding, university, industry, government partnerships, and innovation-focused investment program in fields like biotech, agri-tech, and green energy should be promoted, strengthening human capital through researcher exchange, joint training, and bilingual education will also be key to bridge cultural and communication gaps. And in inclusion, the CPTPP has created new momentum for Vietnam-Mexico economic ties, particularly in trade, investment, and innovation, while bilateral trade has expanded persistent challenges, especially in regulatory alignment, logistics, and with science and technology collaboration continue to limit the full potential of the partnership. To ensure sustainable and forward-looking growth, both countries should prioritize institutional cooperation, invest in innovation and human capital, and foster complementarities in production. Most importantly, science and technology must be elevated a pillar enabling deeper value chain integration and long-term innovation-driven cooperation. So, thank you so much for watching and listening. That's all my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lê Thị Vân for the presentation. And we have learned about the CPTPP is important driver for Vietnam-Mexico economic relations in the CTPP era. And now I would like to invite Professor Felipe Lopez-Breroni, UNAM scholar. He is currently a full-time tenure professor in the Center for Theoretical and Multidisciplinary Study in Social Science. And he research lies in semiotics and political discourse, theoretical problem of communication and dissemination of science, symbolic form and cultural theory. His presentation is now as a team techno-scientific development and international cooperation as a means of countering global inequalities. And please, Professor Felipe, please make your presentation.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid my camera doesn't work, but I will share my presentation, and I would like to thank everybody for being here. I'm honored and very happy to participate in this academic dialogue. I'll try to share the screen, and here we go. I hope you can see it now.
Yes, we can see it, Professor.
Thank you. Okay, basically, this is more of a reflection on a number of things that have to do with emerging economies and the policies designed to improve techno-scientific development. Just a second, this is my fault here. Okay, there we are. I would like to begin by exploring two paradoxes regarding science and technology. Carl Sagan in The Demon-Haunted World, and Walter Benjamin's in his essay, Illuminations. I believe both should be taken into account when designing public policy regarding science and technology. Sagan argued in 1997 that we live in a world highly dependent on increasingly complex science and technology, of which most people don't understand. Therefore, it was a highly combustible mixture that one day it would explode in our hands. And he also pointed out that this divide posed a fundamental question: who is running science and technology in a democracy where a great majority tends to ignore the meaning of scientific and technological achievements? It is an issue that concerns public education and public perception of science. Without the people understanding of what science can do and what science cannot do, necessary support for new research may be difficult to obtain. On the other hand, Walter Benjamin observed in the late 1930s that all experience of civilization is at the same time a form of barbarism. An acute thinker and observer, Benjamin was conscious of, Benjamin was conscious of the dialectics between progress and social inequality, an issue that not all scientists address, and of how many discoveries and achievements in the fields of physics, chemistry, and engineering pose a danger to a sustainable planet. Here we have the nuclear energy, which is a very positive achievement in physics, but at the same time, we have the atomic bomb. We have the development of plastic industry, but now we have huge islands of plastic floating in the ocean and contaminating it, polluting it. It's the same thing with cars. They have given us mobility, they make us go here and there, but the quality of the air and the pollution they generate in cities and other places is dreadful. So it is a dialectic that we really should address from different perspectives. Part of this has to do with the nature itself of scientific inquiry, the consequences of which are not always easy to fathom, but another part has to do with the political and economic interests that guide scientific and technological research beyond the field of pure knowledge. At the risk of being reductive, it is possible to argue that there are two main trends regarding scientific and technological policies: a market-driven tendency, which logically favors and focuses on profit and competitiveness, but also promotes concentration of knowledge and its use for dominance and control. And then there's a socially driven tendency, which promotes cooperation and greater distribution of scientific knowledge for the benefit of all the people. Ideally, a mixture of both seems to be the best option in order to generate a sustained trend in applied research, one which, while yielding a profit or a reasonable profit for private investors, has the wider objective of elevating the quality of life for all countries, in particular those that have been at the margin of modern capitalism and industrial societies. Science and technology need funding and should be regarded as an integral component in public administration. However, it is not the case. While high economic economies like Israel, which invest 6% of its general GDP in science, and South Korea, over 5%, lead what we know as research and development intensity, most emerging economies allocate less than 2% of the GDP to research and development, with many below 1%, as is the case of Mexico, and I'm afraid it's the case of Vietnam. This gap reflects structural challenges, including limited public and private sector funding, weak institutional frameworks, and a shortage of skilled researchers. According to the UN, the recommended expenditure for research and development in science and technology is at least 1% of the GDP. In fact, global average of expenditure is around 2.63% of GDP for science and technology. But emerging economies, such as Mexico and Vietnam, spend less than 1% of their GDP in research and development, while Brazil is an exception in Latin America. I would like to focus on these issues showcasing the three countries, Mexico and Vietnam, because they are the subject of this dialogue, but I would also like to bring into perspective the case of Brazil, because it's the highest economy of America, the biggest economy of America, Latin America, and has managed to break with some of the negative trends. I believe that even when private funding is the most in any policy of scientific and technological research, and seeking a reasonable profit is part of the game, our countries would benefit much from cooperation more than competitiveness. And this implies that we acknowledge what are the shortcomings regarding the state of our scientific and technological status. Most of the information I'm going to share with you comes from the UNESCO and the World Bank. Okay, here is the suggested by UNESCO, the expenditure of the GDP in science and technology. And as we'll see, now we have this in the case. Mexico is the lowest one with 0.31% of the GDP applied to research and development. Vietnam follows with 0.53. Brazil is already in 1.15% of its GDP. Now, this is interesting because we have, the particular experience of each country in the sense that we are coming from a very critical situation throughout our history. For example, Mexico more or less has 400 researchers per million inhabitants, while Vietnam has around 700 researchers per million inhabitants, and Brazil 900 researchers for every million inhabitants. No? Mexico's rate of scientists and researchers is relatively low compared to developed nations. According to UNESCO, Mexico had approximately 400 researchers per million inhabitants in 2020, compared to over 4,000 in the United States and 5,000 in South Korea. This translates to a small proportion of the workforce engaged in scientific research, with only about 0.4% of the employed population working as researchers or scientists, compared to over 1% in high-income countries. The shortage of scientists in Mexico is exacerbated by something we have in common with Vietnam and Brazil, the brain drain. As many trained researchers seek opportunities abroad due to limited funding, low salaries, and bureaucratic challenges in the academic sector. Mexico has recently promoted its National Council of Science and Technology to the status of a ministry, and it's now promoting together humanities, science, technology, and innovation. Mexico's policies face several challenges. First, the low research and development intensity limits the country's ability to innovate independently, making it reliant on foreign technology in key industries. Second, the concentration of research and development in urban centers like Mexico City and Monterrey creates regional disparities, leaving rural areas unattended. Third, the education system struggles to produce enough scientific, technological, engineering, and mathematical graduates, with only 1.5% of university students pursuing careers in these fields. Brazil is the largest economy in Latin America, with a GDP of approximately 2.1 trillion per person in 2023, and has a more robust science and technology framework than Mexico, but still faces significant constraints. According to the World Bank, Brazil's research and development expenditure was 1.15% of the GDP, placing it among the top third world countries, but below global leaders like China, 2.4%, and the United States, 3.4%. Brazil's state's policy are guided by the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation, which coordinates funding, research priorities, and international collaborations. Key initiatives include the National Science and Technology Development Plan, which emphasizes areas such as biotechnology, renewable energy, and aerospace. Brazil has also invested in science parks and innovation hubs, such as Technological Park of São José dos Campos, which supports aerospace and defense research. Now, Brazil has a higher rate of scientists than Mexico, with approximately 900 researchers per million inhabitants in 2020, according to UNESCO. This translates to about 0.9% of the workforce engaged in research activities, still low compared to developed nations, but significant for a third world country. Brazil's strengths lie in its large pool of scientific, technological, engineering, and mathematical graduates, with about 20% of university students pursuing these fields, and supported by public universities like the Universidad of Sao Paulo and the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. However, Brazil also faces brain drain, particularly in high-tech fields, as researchers seek better opportunities in Europe and North America. The government has induced programs like Ciencias Sin Fronteras, Science Without Borders, to fund international training to Brazilian scientists. Now, Vietnam is a rapidly growing economy with a GDP of approximately 470 billion per person. In 2023, according to UNESCO, Vietnam's research and development expenditure was 0.53 of GDP in 2020. Vietnam's spending has grown steadily, driven by government policies to moderate the economy and modernize the economy and attend foreign investment. Vietnam's science and technology policies are coordinated by the Ministry of Science and Technology, which oversees the national strategy of science, technology, and innovation. This strategy emphasizes digital transformation, green technology, and high-tech industries like electronics and semiconductors. The private sector plays a growing role in Vietnam's research and development, particularly in export-oriented industries like electronics, which account for a substantial share of the GDP. However, public funding remains the backbone of basic research, which universities and state-owned research institutes leading in fields like agriculture, health, and economic science. I don't want to extend too much, but let's see. Okay, this is more or less the workforce employed in science and technology in each country. Now, these are the challenges that I think the three of these countries face. First of all, there's very limited funding. Low research and development intensities reflect competing priorities and the elevation of infrastructure and development. Even Brazil, which is the highest among the three, allocates less than half of what global leaders spend in general terms. Okay. Compared to global leaders, all three countries, Brazil, Mexico, and Vietnam, lag significantly. For example, Israel has a 6% of the GDP invested in research and development, and driven by a strong public-private partnership and a focus on high industries, while South Korea has a 5%, reflects heavy private sector investment. The low research and development intensities in Mexico, Brazil, and Vietnam are partly due to competing priorities such as poverty reduction and infrastructure development, which divert resources from science and technology. The proportion of scientists in the workforce also varies across the three countries. Brazil has the highest rate, followed by Vietnam and Mexico. These figures are low compared to developed nations where scientists often constitute over 1% of the workforce. The disparity is driven by differences in educational systems, economic structures, and incentives for research careers. Brazil benefits from a strong public university system, while Vietnam's focus on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education is beginning to yield results. Mexico, however, struggles with a low system scientific, technological, engineering, and mathematical employment and brain drain, limiting in scientist pool. Each country has developed unique science and technology policies tailored to its economic and social context. Mexico focuses on building research capacity in universities, but its impact is limited by low funding. Brazil's has different programs that have fostered innovation in key sectors like agriculture and aerospace, but economic volatility hinders sustained progress. And Vietnam's most national strategy for science and technology aim to leverage foreign investment and digital transformation, but the country lacks the research infrastructure for its large competitors. In terms of outcomes, Brazil ranks highest among the three in the Global International Index, at 50th, followed by Mexico, number 56, and Vietnam, number 46. These rankings reflect Brazil's leadership in Latin America, something we should benefit from, both Vietnam and Mexico, not only the US, we could also think in terms of other Latin American countries, and Vietnam's rapid progress in innovation in other systems, ecosystems. However, all three countries rank below the top 20 dominated by high-income economies. So the challenges facing the three countries are limited funding, low research and development intensities reflect competing priorities. Sorry, I already read that. And the opportunities and recommendations that despite these challenges, Mexico and Brazil have significant opportunities to advance their scientific and technological sectors. First of all, it would be great if we could increase public investment. Governments should aim to increase R&D expenditure to at least 1 or 2% of the GDP, focusing on basic research to build long-term innovation capacity. This could involve relocating budgets or seeking international funding from organizations like the World Bank. We also need to strengthen scientific, technological, engineering, and mathematical education, expanding access to this education and providing scholarships for graduate studies can increase the number of scientists and engineers. Brazil's public universities and Vietnam's STEM initiatives provide models for Mexico to emulate. Foster public-private partnerships, encouraging collaborations between universities, research institutes, and the private sector can drive applied research and technology transfer. Mexico could learn from Vietnam's success in attracting foreign investment in high-tech industries. An essential thing that we all should address is the brain drain. Policies like Brazil's Ciencia Sin Fronteras, Science Without Frontiers, and Mexico's national system of research could be expanded and better funded to retain talent. Vietnam could offer tax incentives for returning scientists. Promote regional equality, decentralizing scientific and technological investment to rural areas can reduce disparities and leverage local resources such as Brazil's biodiversity or Vietnam's agricultural potential. And the leverage of international collaborations, partnerships with developed nations and regional organizations like ASEAN in Vietnam or Mercosur for Brazil can facilitate technology transfer and capacity building. If anything, cooperation is a far better option than competitiveness when trying to level the playing field. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Félix López-Belleroni. To presentation give the big concrete scenario of science and technology opportunities between Mexico and Vietnam. In the next period, two countries should open new talks, interaction, and signing more agreements for enhanced cooperation in science and technology. And as the scientists, our vast and Institute for European and American Studies, we do our best to strengthen this relationship in science and technology. And now I would like to open to the Q&A panel. And if you have any questions, please raise and our scholar will give you the answer. We have two questions from Dr. Lê Lan Anh from Vietnam Institute of Medical Studies. Considering Mexico's current import demand and Vietnam production capability, Vietnam's share in American market is still small when compared to China. So, which Vietnamese product can effectively compete with Chinese food, and what are your recommendations for improvement to enhance Vietnam export performance there? And I would like to invite Professor Félix to give the answer.
Thank you very much. I couldn't really understand the question.
Yes, Professor, because there was like an echo. I can repeat.
Yeah, the echo is a little bit distracting.
Yes, I can repeat you the question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, considering Mexico's current import demands and Vietnam's production capabilities, Vietnam's trade share in the Mexican market is still small when compared to China. So, which Vietnamese products can effectively compete with Chinese goods? And what are your recommendations for improvement to enhance Vietnam's export performance there?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I'm not an expert on economic issues, but I would argue that one of the great things that Vietnam has is a lot of agricultural produce that could be imported by Mexico. And also this electronic sector, which I believe is being highly developed now in Vietnam and could also benefit Mexico. China is a big giant. It's very much like the USA. So we have to learn to live with them. But I think there are certain areas, for example, tourism, that could be very beneficial for both countries. And above all, perhaps we should think in terms of creating a common layer for new students, graduate students, that sort of like try to understand each other in the sense of being emerging economies, third world countries that need to strengthen their educational processes, their research processes, and perhaps, doing this exchange between students, professors, and sharing common products. I insist especially on sustainable agriculture, environmental research, and perhaps these electronic and semiconductors industries.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you for answer from Félix. And we have the second questions from Dr. Lê Lan Anh from Vietnam Institute of Medical Studies. Despite the benefit of agreement like CPTPP, what are the most common and significant regulatory to legal area that Mexico current face when exporting to Vietnam? And I would like to invite Dr. Alejandro to give the questions, to give the answer to these questions. Please, Dr. Alejandro.
Sorry, I'm sorry because the second question about Mexican companies. So I can I will.
You can invite Mr. Pablo Ramírez to answer this question.
This question about barriers that Mexican companies face. So I want to hear from Mexico.
Because Dr. Ramírez talk a lot about the global competition, especially the US and China's trade war. And so I would like to know more about besides the benefits that we both of us can get from the TPP and other bilateral commitment. Yeah, but I would like to know more about from the Mexican side that so what do you really want from Vietnam to promote the Mexican exporting products to Vietnam's market? So what is the most obstacles that the Mexican companies are facing now? Yeah, gracias.
So I would like to invite the UNAM scholars to give the answers to the questions. And Professor Felipe Lopez, can you give the answer?
Thank you so much. I believe Dr. Pablo Ramírez would be in a better position to answer that question. I think he's not at the moment with us, but I'm reading the question, and it's a very interesting one. Mexico has a very tough regulating system that this new government is trying to address. There are many different obstacles, bureaucratic obstacles, economic and financial obstacles for companies to export. And I believe that the big tendency is to try and get into the American market. So I think we need much more contact between Vietnam and Mexico, so that I understand that Kitsania, which is a project of an amusement park for kids, is now operating in Vietnam. Well, we need to promote more what are the interests of the Vietnamese consumer. What would they like in terms of coming from Mexico? I would imagine tequila, for example, or mezcal, to name two products that are being highly exported everywhere else in the world. We also have a very interesting clothing industry. These things, I think, could have an impact, or could be presented to the market in Vietnam. But I think Mexican businessmen are not very knowledgeable about what is Vietnam, what its consuming potential, and how they could sort of like open up to a more better relationship, so that they can think in terms of exporting over there.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And so, as the Ambassador Negrín indicates, that Mexico and Vietnam has still many potential areas for future cooperation, especially in machinery and food production, like exporting tequila, right? So I hope that in a very near future, with many current cooperation between Vietnam and Mexico, and the profits that CPTPP can bring to both of us, our relationship will more grow up and reach many achievements. So today, I know that now it's very late in Mexico, but thank you a lot. Yeah, and very happy to see all of the colleagues from UNAM University again. I really hope that we will have more dialogues like this in the future to reconnect and share knowledge and foster new collaborations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if Dr. Ramírez wants to make some remarks in this regard.
Well, honestly, I haven't really looked into the processes to basically, the regulatory or legal barriers, but I guess each country has its own standards and barriers that complicate things for products from abroad. So, but yeah, I think what had already been discussed is very important. My first guess is there is a big gap of knowledge about the Vietnamese market for Mexican products. Of course, what we always exported first is tequila, mezcal, and these traditional Mexican exports. But I'm pretty sure there is a lot of opportunities for other products from food, from different kind of chilies, because Vietnamese food is also spicy, but also to maybe machineries and other products that can help the Vietnamese economy too. So that this is something that needs to be studied. I haven't done it, unfortunately, yet. But yeah, that the opportunities for both Mexican companies to go to Vietnam and Vietnamese companies to come to Mexico are very big. And there was another questions there by Iván about immigration policies, but that I guess it's better for the people at the embassy to answer this.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Professor Pablo.
Thank you. We have received one more question from Iván Gutierrez. In order to improve cooperation in all area mentioned, I believe immigration policies should also adapt. Currently, the process regarding work permit visa seems to be a bit complicated for both countries. How could that be improved? I am a Mexican who has been living and working in Hanoi, Vietnam for the last 6 years. Wow, this is a question regarding permits, working for permit and visas. So I will move to our college in the embassy, and we will give you the answer later after we receive the answer from the embassy. Okay. And due to the time limit, so I would like to thank for all of the colleagues for the second panel. We have very exciting panel regarding the science and technologies cooperation between Mexico and Vietnam. So I would like to give the floor to Mr. Pablo Mendoza to carrying out the next steps for our seminar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hyun Nguyen. And well, it was a the fruitful exchanges today have illuminated diverse perspectives and covered themes essential to our bilateral partnership. And to close, we would like to invite Dr. Alicia Girón and Dr. Tang, as well as the Mexican ambassador, Mr. Alejandro Negrín, to share their concluding remarks. Please, Dr. Alicia Girón. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pablo. Well, it has been very excited to be here. I have learned a lot, and I have been taking some notes. But I will, for example, one of the speech of Pablo Ramírez is very interesting in how he took Sector 84 and Sector 85. 84 is metal, mechanic industry, and 85 electrical and electronic, and how this is very important right now, especially for our digital economy. So the numbers that he had made and how we can compare it between Mexico and Vietnam, I think is one point that it is very important. At the same time, well, he shows how during the last 20 years, how the globalization process has been a very deep process. And besides, one of the other things that it was very interesting is the tariffs that before the arrival of Trump and even in Biden, how these tariffs have been increased for especially for the importations of USA. And then I have another thing that it has been very interesting, the paper of the of Lindy Dean about the current state of economic relations of the employment relation. Well, she has made a great view of since 1975 the importance of the CPTPP, the APEC, and also the insertion of Vietnam in the World Trade Organization. So other things that it was very interesting. She mentioned the Kitsania Hanoi, which is a Mexican company, and it's also very interesting because Kitsania is also in USA, but now the interest of some Mexican entrepreneurs in Vietnam, and well, of course, this is a great job, especially of the opportunities that our entrepreneurs have in Vietnam. Well, is that job that Ambassador Negrini is doing, because this is one of the principal objectives of our Mexican ambassadors around the world. So other thing that I would like to, well, is also the, well, then into 3. Oh, well, I think I lost one. Page 1, page 2. Well, LinkedIn, and then, well, of course, then the thing that it was also, and it's very a complementary paper of Lili Banya, which is Vietnam Mexican economic relations and the progressive and progressive agreement for overview of bilateral relations. Well, she has been the importance of these agreements for Mexico and for Vietnam. And in the last paper of Fernando Beroni, I think he highlights the importance of the invest in education, in research, and he shows how we only have in Mexico 400 researchers for 1 million, in Vietnam 700, and Brazil is 900. And of course, this depends in the investment that the governments make in scientific research and technology. For me, this will be the highlights of this conference. Of course, we can continue talking about that. I hope these papers will be published because they were a very good, this is a very good conversation, and I enjoy that. And thank you to give me this opportunity, because I learned a lot about these 50 years of Mexican relations between, and these international relations between Mexico and Vietnam. Thank you very much, and thank you to our Mexican ambassador, Mexican UNAM ambassador in China, Adalberto Noyola, and also of all the team of UNAM-China. Thank you very much, Pablo.
Thanks very much, Dr. Alicia Girón, for your insightful closing remarks. And now we welcome Dr. Tan Minh Duc for his closing thoughts. Please, Dr.
Tan. Thank you. For after the 2 hours following two sessions, profile on open discussion We have collective gain multi-dimension, practical and promise perspective on the relation between Vietnam and Mexico in the current context in the future. From the insight shared today's seminar, it is evident in the Vietnam and Mexico are natural partner, processing many similar and significant central and the complementary across various aspects and bilateral relationship over past 50 years and have been cultivated for shared goodwill and sustainable cooperation. Truly, academic forum such this one help us identify a new potential aspect, creative idea, foster constructive dialogue between two countries in the Vietnam, Mexico. In the news international landscape, we must continue in the broaden out the cooperation, especially key area such as science, in technology, innovation, renewable and energy, high tech in the agriculture, education and the training, digital in the transformation and the sustainable development. It's actually role research institute my institute in the university and academic exchange between the two countries. Actually, on the behalf in the Institute of European American Study, I would like thank for the organized committee and speaker and for presenter and thank for the UNAM attendee participation contribute in today's cinema. I express thank for the national UNAM in the center of Asia, Africa, Latin America study program, embassy in the Mexico, in the Vietnam, until collaborate successful organize this cinema. We hope that today's discussion will not confine economic dialogue, but we will way more practically and concrete comparison between Vietnam and Mexico and come in the future. And again, xin thank you all distinguished guests and spectators in the attend today's cinema. I wish would have look forward meeting confident in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tan Minh Duc, for your closing remarks. Finally, we give the floor to the Mexican ambassador to Vietnam, Your Excellency, Mr. Alejandro Negrín. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thanks, especially all the speakers for their very good presentations. Of course, thanks especially to the colleagues in Mexico for their patience, taking into account the hour there. And of course, the first general conclusion is that the collaboration, that this seminar, the seminar shows that the collaboration between UNAM and VAS is a tool of enormous importance in the bilateral relations between Mexico and Vietnam. So we hope this collaboration will continue and intensify. And the presentations suggest many valuable, I would say, initial conclusions. One of them is that not only referred about how the relation between both countries has been growing, but that the relation is a very substantive relation and has an enormous future. Another aspect is that the international context is opening new opportunities for this relation, including the fact that the trade agreement CPTPP still has a huge field to be explored by both countries. And apropos of some of the last comments, I would like to inform you that the embassy, with a couple of institutions, has published last year a guide that the title is Vietnam for Mexican Companies, business guide, that has a chapter dedicated to the opportunities for Mexican exporters in Vietnam, referring the specific sectors that we have identified. So it's a tool that is also online. Of course, the seminar also is proposing that we need more institutional mechanisms for reinforcing relations in areas like innovation, green technologies, digital transformation, semiconductors. So it's proposing the sectors of the future, sectors for the future of the relation. And in this sense, I think that one of the most important contributions of the seminar is the necessity of integrating science and technology in the strategy of the bilateral relations, with new actions, including the reflection about the role of science and technology socially oriented in emerging economies, and good practices in this field that can be shared. So finally, I would say that we hope that the papers that have been presented in this seminar could be published in the book that we are preparing, and I transmit again my enormous appreciation to UNAM, the office of UNAM in China that is facilitating the seminar, also to the University Program of Studies on Asia, Africa, and Oceania of UNAM, and of course the Institute for European and American Studies of BAS. Thank you very much, all of you, for your extraordinary contributions in this seminar.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Negrín. And well, unfortunately, we have reached the time to say goodbye, but I would like to thank you all again for being part of this remarkable event, which is now part of the history of bilateral relations between Mexico and Vietnam. To our colleagues in Mexico, I say good night. I think you have to rest now. It's very late for all of you, and thank you very much for being with us so late. And of course, to our colleagues in Vietnam, have a very good day. We look forward to our next gathering. Thanks again, and goodbye.
Thank you. And
Good night,
congratulations.
everybody.
Felicidades.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hasta luego.
Bye.
También.
We have no chance.
Thank you. Goodbye.